SuperTalk Mississippi Media production.
Never take your heart health for granted. For just $99, you can get a complete screening and know your risks. Call 601-249-5198 to schedule your Happy Healthy Heart screening at Southwest Mississippi Regional Medical Center.
Good morning once again. Welcome back in. This is Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk Mississippi. Thank you for being with us. Mornings is presented by Community Bank, online at communitybank.net, rooted in our community. At Community Bank, they know your name. You're not just a number, an account number on a computer screen. They're going to get to know you and understand your needs and find out about the things that you want and what you're dreaming about and what you are trying to accomplish. They're going to listen, and then they're going to work with you to find a solution. Community Bank, the name says a lot. The people at Community Bank are in your community, and they are ready to help you online, communitybank.net, rooted in our community. The 7 o'clock hour of Mornings is brought to you every day by MWG Employer Services. Find them online at mwgemployerservices.com. If you're struggling with HR, payroll, and benefits, you're not alone. Everybody kind of struggles with that. It's complicated. Which box do I check? Your employees want to know which box they're supposed to check, getting everything in line. Well, MWG Employer Services can make it easier for you. They can provide a full range of employer services plus a custom plan. Custom means just for you. Learn more online, mwgemployerservices.com or 601-206-7966. They'd love the opportunity to visit with you. I got a message during the break, Will, from a friend who said, think about what you just said out loud. You can make more in college this coming year than you can on a practice squad in the National Football League. That's wild. There used to be only one or two places where that was true. Now that can be true a lot of places.
I mean, you take these players who are, not quite NFL starters yet, judging by, their position on the practice squad, and they can make significantly more, right?
Yeah. And look, practice squad money in the NFL is good money. Good money. Let's see here. NFL practice.
But they could cut you tomorrow.
That's right. There are no guarantees at all. Over the course of an 18-week season, just shy of $250,000 if you're on the practice squad for the entire team. Minimum weekly salary, $13,750. Veterans can negotiate more and can make up to $411,000. But you're talking about rookies, so they're going to be at the bottom of that scale.
Yep.
You're talking about guys that would come in and would be on your campus for 4 or 5 months. September, October, November, December, and you hope a good portion of the month of January.
And then,
hired gun. So I mean, just if you're doing the math, if you think that, let's use Daquan Wright as an example. Ole Miss is optimistic about its tight end position. If they could get Daquan Wright back as a true tight end, let's just say they pay him $1 million. He would make that in a month. What he was going to make in the NFL over the course of an 18-week season on the practice squad. And I'm just pulling that number out of thin air.
And probably more security.
Yeah. All right. Lawmakers yesterday met for the first time with citizens on their tour of the Joint Committee on Redistricting and Reapportionment. Kicked off a series of public hearings yesterday in Itawamba County. They were on the campus of ICC. The planned public meetings are being held as part of the legislature's attempted effort to redraw legislative, congressional, and judicial districts in the wake of the Supreme Court ruling in Calais versus Louisiana that determined racial gerrymandering to be unconstitutional as it has been practiced under Section 2 of the VRA, the Voting Rights Act. There were a number of people that showed up to largely speak about their disagreement with the idea of redistricting. The chair of the committee said, hey, we're not here to debate. We're here to answer questions and to listen. So this was not a, hey, we're going to debate the position with you. We want your input. We want your feedback. They got that from Reverend Jeffrey Gladney. He's pastor of the Johnson Chapel Missionary Baptist Church in Shannon, Mississippi. He opened the remarks telling lawmakers that nothing in the Calais decision requires Mississippi to redistrict. He said unfair maps does not hold up the promise of unalienable rights. It weakens an already broken community system. Gladney claimed that the goal of redrawing the electoral districts is to eliminate black districts, calling the effort to redistrict an attack on black votes. He went on to say if the maps are redrawn, they will split neighborhoods, divide communities, take away resources from those already weakened communities. And then he got a little silly, saying losing Congressman Benny Thompson in the 2nd District would mean losing his influence, his voice, and the resources that he's able to bring back to the district. We would lose a champion for democracy, Reverend Gladney said about the Democrat from the 2nd District of Mississippi. Most of the speakers were Democrat-aligned voices. One speaker called the redistricting process racism and fascism and labeled Donald Trump as a fascist dictator. These community events will continue. A week from today, legislators will be in Senatobia at Northwest Community College, September 1st at Delta State, September 8th at Alcorn State. September 10th, they'll be on the campus of Meridian Community College, then Southern Miss on the 17th, Mississippi Gulf Coast Community College on the 22nd, and they will wrap up these sessions on October 1st at the state capitol in Mississippi. So going back to the comment that Gladney made. Unfair maps does not hold up the promise of unalienable rights. It weakens an already broken community system. Reverend, what unalienable right is being taken away? Life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, aren't those the unalienable rights that were guaranteed in the Constitution of the United States? Life is not taken away. Liberty is not taken away. Your pursuit of happiness is not taken away by redistricting. And as much as you want to say and believe and shout from the rooftops, this is to eliminate black districts, it's not. If we're being real, the goal for Republicans is to eliminate Democrat districts. Now, you might say, or you might argue, Richard, that's one and the same. It's not one and the same. The laws of our land allow gerrymandering based on politics, based on partisanship. They do not, according to the Supreme Court, allow for districts based solely on race. And when you say the goal of redrawing these districts is to eliminate black districts, you are making it 100% about race. It is about partisanship. There's an argument to be made that it shouldn't be about partisanship, that it should be one man, one vote, and districts should make sense geographically, period. It's not the law. The law is you cannot create districts based exclusively on race. That's what the Supreme Court said in Calais versus Louisiana. Back with you right after this.
Good morning. Good morning to you there.
Okay, up and at 'em.
Start your day right. Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Well, I'm curious if you and Mandy earlier this week talked at all about the story out of Penn State.
We did.
This is wild. This collegiate cocaine distribution ring
Out of the frat house.
out of a pair of frat houses, the Delta Upsilon fraternity house and the Sigma Chi fraternity house at Penn State. The New York Post says a Long Island kid who grew up in a spacious $1.5 million Westbury manse, I guess that's like a mini mansion, was one of the alleged ringleaders of a lucrative cocaine ring run out of a pair of fraternity houses. Agostino Abatiello, who is 24 years old, surrendered to Pennsylvania prosecutors earlier this week, I guess Tuesday morning, to face charges of possession with intent to deliver cocaine and conspiracy after being busted for allegedly peddling drugs through the fraternities. He was allegedly at the very top of the chain in the crime ring, according to prosecutors. Turned himself in on Tuesday after failing to show up for an arraignment on Monday. He is being held without bond. He was given a nickname. I mean, it's not a funny story, but there are elements of this story that are funny. His nickname was Pablo Pledge Scabar.
By the way, while we were doing the story with Mandy, I came up with a few, and I'll give them to you here in a minute, but I came up with a few fraternity names for this little operation.
I certainly want to hear those. There is another young man, Thomas Robinson, who went by T-Rob. So we got Pablo Pledge Scabar and T-Rob that are running they're running the dope ring on the campus at Penn State. His dad, T-Rob's dad, goes by P-Rob. He's a partner at a major Pittsburgh law firm. Big law firm in Pittsburgh. The father, P-Rob, as we are referring to him, has also been implicated in the ring and hit with felony charges of concealing evidence.
Oh.
Apparently he was trying to make a safe with some cash and some coke in it disappear. Now, there's an element of dazed and confused that goes along with this. The whole, I keep getting older, but they stay the same age. Both accused ringleaders, T-Rob and Pablo Escobar, graduated 2 years ago.
Oh.
But they're still hanging around.
Why leave?
Abatiello was described as an accounting major on the dean's list with a passion for numbers and financial storytelling. He just discovered a way to boost the income and give himself some good numbers to look at. He lives in a single-family home in Westbury. His neighbors in Westbury said he had a good job in accounting and he was doing well. Yeah, a little side hustle was doing real well. One neighbor said they were all taken care of, spoon-fed. They weren't the kinds of kids to take the garbage out or shovel the snow. So how is it that they got caught? Well, maybe got a little big for their britches. So T-Rob, who was allegedly selling large amounts of cocaine from the Delta Upsilon fraternity house at Penn State, was accepting payments through his personal Venmo account with the username Tom Robinson. Oops. A database search for Tom Robinson eventually led cops to a Thomas Robinson, whoever could have guessed, with an address for the Delta Upsilon fraternity house. When authorities executed a search warrant for the frat house in December of 2024, T-Rob allegedly resisted arrest because he, quote, thought the officers were his fraternity brothers playing a prank on him, close quote. Because of his resisting of arrest, he was tasered and taken into custody while a search of his dorm room allegedly turned up over 8 grams of coke, almost 8 ounces of weed, and more than 200 amphetamine and dextroamphetamine pills, and a Kimber 45 that was found in a safe above his mini fridge. So, I mean, he was still a college student. He still had a mini fridge in the dorm.
Don't tase me, bro.
Just had a safe on top of it. Yeah, don't tase me, bro. No word as to whether or not there was a suppressor on the 45. He was charged with drug manufacturing and delivery, criminal use of a communication facility, possession of a controlled substance, possession of drug paraphernalia. And then he ratted out his supplier, Agostino.
Oh, no, you can't do that. Come on.
Pablo Escobar got dragged down by T-Rob. They met through one of Robinson's fraternity brothers, who was allegedly dealing drugs. That fraternity brother allegedly asked Robinson to become a business partner in distributing cocaine in July of 2023. He allegedly made several large cocaine purchases from Escobar between January and September of 2024, including single purchases of $18,000 and $22,000.
Yes. Let me give you these names real quick. Sigma El Chapo. Okay. Delta Tau Tijuana.
Jeez.
This is my favorite one. Gamma Gamma Guadalajara.
C-Spire text line, Will.
Yeah.
Kind of gives a whole new meaning to Penn State doing a whiteout. Joey the Trucker says, Escobar, that name sounds familiar. With it being school-related, will there be enhancements on the charges? I don't know.
Sigma Nu Sinaloa.
Leave the Sigma News out of this. Had nothing to do with this at the Snake House. Josh and Clinton says a Kimber 45. Wow, not the usual criminal's weapon of choice. Those things are pricey.
Well, when you slinging all this dope, you got the cash.
I think Lucas just one-upped you.
Oh, that's a good one. Oh, that is so much better.
Snow Paterno turned the Nittany Lions into the Nittany Lines.
Wait, who was the one that had Gamma Gamma Grandma?
We get another one that says the Sniffny Lions.
The Sniffny Lions.
Oy, oy, oy.
That's a big 10 kilos going on there.
It's easy to laugh about this story. If you were a parent of a college-age child, this is scary.
And the
Snortny Lions. Jeez.
And they came from privilege, had every opportunity.
They did. And apparently the dad of this attorney in Pittsburgh, Paul Robinson, there is an accusation that he is the one that was supplying the cocaine. Darren in Jackson says, I just turned on the radio, must have missed something big. Yeah, Darren, just Google Penn State cocaine ring and read up. Mu Theta Medellin. Oy, oy, oy. But seriously, if you are a parent, you have to wonder, Penn Snort. Jeez. Is Penn State unique?
Yeah.
Or is this happening on many, many, many college campuses across the country?
Now they're going to be at the state pen.
Yeah. Maybe they can say hi to Jerry Sandusky while they're there. Or did he die?
I think he's still alive.
Yeah. Mornings with Richard Cross, SuperTalk Mississippi. Senator Nicole Atkins Boyd will join me next. Also, James Cummins going to join us in the 8 o'clock hour. Executive Director with Wildlife Mississippi. Kappa kilos. Come on.
Wake up! Wake up! Rise and shine!
Start your day right. Mornings with Richard Cross
Nice early morning surprise.
on Super Talk Mississippi.
Last Sunday morning, the sunshine felt like rain. Week before, they all
Thanks for being with us. Mornings with Richard Cross, presented by Community Bank. Glad to be with you this morning and glad to be joined by Senator Nicole Atkins Boyd. She represents District 9. That is mostly Lafayette County, a little bit of Panola County in there as well. She's chair of Senate Universities and Colleges, vice chair of the Senate Medicaid Committee, and regular guest. Good morning, Senator.
Good morning, Richard. How are you?
Doing well. Doing well. Appreciate your time as always. I would love to start. You were at the conference this week, right? The Accelerate conference?
I was.
So, well, let me ask you this to start. We've talked a lot about workforce development, the role that plays with our community colleges, with colleges, and we got into a conversation yesterday. It actually was around the H-2A visa program and migrant workers and some changes that might be coming to this. And we got a message from someone that said they live in the central part of the Delta, looking for full-time work, working part-time right now, having to drive, and said, I've submitted 100 applications in the last year and I can't find a full-time job. Somebody made the comment that it feels like there's a disconnect when we have these conversations about economic development and job availability. We hear leaders, whether it's Courtney Taylor or others that are in workforce development, saying that there are jobs available, good paying jobs in Mississippi. And yet we hear from people who go, I can't find a job. So where is that disconnect in your mind?
So I think one of the things that people need to do is really use that office to try to do that. But there are a tremendous amount of jobs that are open in the state. One of the things we did yesterday to kind of hopefully help some people, maybe just like the person that wrote into you that said they'd applied for 100 jobs. We've got a lot of people looking for jobs, and they're looking to really upskill what they're doing. And so through Accelerate Mississippi, we funded the program, or we really put that program called Upskill in, and it's targeted at people that are over the age of 24 that maybe they're in the market right now, but they don't have the technical skills that they need for the jobs that are really out there and those jobs that are high wage. And so that we approved that yesterday through one of the funding committees with the state financial aid. And so really check with Accelerate, look for those programs. They're going to be offered regionally to put people, to train them, to get them into those high-wage jobs very quickly. So that's one of the things the state is trying to do, probably to really focus on those individuals that are actively looking for work, but maybe don't necessarily have the same skills that are needed right now.
Does some of those jobs fall into what we might classify as professional jobs as opposed to trades-based jobs?
A lot of those jobs are in those trade spaces that are really those high-wage jobs. So they are a lot of times really can help people get into those trade spaces, especially with Amazon coming on, and there's a lot of stuff going on in North Mississippi that they need workers with certain skill sets, and it's skill sets that people traditionally didn't really go to school for a number of years ago, maybe when I was in school. So this is really going to help people get those skill sets to go in those different arenas.
Nicole, one of the things that we've talked about a bunch with you in the past has been the opioid settlement situation. That is the funding that is being distributed through the Attorney General's office through that application process. There were a couple of updates to that, one being the payment structure that is available for award recipients, and then also a new timeline for application for fiscal year 27, which I guess we're now into.
Right. So, and just to back up for just a second, the opioid situation, you were talking about the Penn State, and while everybody's kind of laughing about it, that's something that you and I see living in a university town. We see, and we are concerned about, because every year it's great to live in a university town. It almost feels like everything's fresh again. You see all these excited new freshmen come to school. Their parents are dropping them off, and you see all the excitement of that. But as parents, it's a very real frightening thing that you think, I've done everything you can do, and your children are going to be exposed to things that they haven't been exposed to before. And so this opioid situation always really hits always close to home to those of us in a university community. And so, and listening to what's going on at Penn State that you're talking about earlier, this is something that really is something we're all working very hard on and very passionate about. One of the things that we've done is we really tried to make sure that there's a lot of naloxone distribution. And I know that that's just a tool once somebody's done that. We really want to focus on prevention and making sure this doesn't happen, and really work with our law enforcement to keep those things away from our people. But so in doing that, we have given monies out to a number of community organizations, a number of people. But the grant criteria, the way that we set it up, it was going to be done quarterly. And a lot of our small community operations, a lot of our really efficient nonprofits can't fund that for 3 months. They've really got to have some assistance and help. So, I think one of the things that speaks volumes is when you realize you've made a mistake and you go back and fix it. And that's what the Opioid Council did, is they want these entities to really be able to go back and help people. So they went back and fixed it and said, we'll reimburse now on a monthly basis if you need it on a monthly basis. And
let's pick up there on the other side of the break. We'll talk about this monthly payment system and then get into some more with Nicole Boyd right after this. Mornings with Richard Cross.
Mississippi.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Here we go. Now back to Mornings with Richard Cross.
now that's entertainment.
Good to be with you this morning. Thanks for joining us. Mornings with Richard Cross. I misspoke earlier when I was talking about that wreck on I-55 with an overturned tanker truck. It's actually northbound around mile marker 76. So if you were heading north into Jackson from south of Jackson, then certainly be aware this morning. Nicole Boyd is my guest, senator that represents District 9. We were talking about opioid settlement fund distribution and a change to monthly distribution for recipients that need that or want that. Senator, I just wanted to clarify there. So the entities that are receiving money from this first round of opioid settlement funds, those were existing groups, right?
Oh, absolutely. They're nonprofits for the most part, and are for the most part, it's a lot of nonprofits, a lot of organizations. They have to have, before they could be awarded money, they really do have to have some strong financial statements that were entered into, and so they've got to have a history really of operating.
Well, and I guess that was, I guess my question was about, you said, some of them needed this money not on a quarterly basis, but on a monthly basis. So if they were existing entities, did you see scenarios where they grew their budgets based on the money that they anticipated coming and therefore needed it on a monthly basis, or did their previous funding mechanisms go away? I guess I was trying to figure out how they were operating financially prior to receiving this money so that they needed it on a monthly basis going forward. And I've got no issue with that. Just kind of curious about the mechanics of it.
Well, and I think the money that was coming in covered basically covered the programs and the services they were doing. And these were a lot of entities that actually, these were some pretty large organizations too that really needed, and they're sound financially, and they cover their bills each, even they may have been able to go 8 weeks without a reimbursement, but to go 12 weeks without a reimbursement put them under some financial strain. Many of them operate also other grants, they operate other programs, and so a quarterly reimbursement really was just out of the question for some of them, really to be able to operate the programs that they needed to. So instead, we're going to be looking now at a 30-day reimbursement. And if you've operated nonprofit, this is not really that unusual for nonprofits because many of them operate really on shoestring budgets, and they put their money out in services. So they don't have huge reserves to be able to do this. But we had some larger organizations that do some outstanding work in the state, and they could cover maybe 60 days, but they couldn't cover the full 120 days with that.
Gotcha. That makes more sense. You and I have talked a lot about the IHL in recent months. Anything happening during this summer, kind of into the fall period, that is advancing the conversation about performance-based funding and some of the, if not demands, maybe perceived demands that the legislature is making going forward?
Well, the College Board yesterday actually had, they meet each month, and they had, I think, some discussions yesterday of where they were. They're meeting right now. They've had an entity propose, they had an entity come in and propose a new budgeting that they would use, and they have various committees that are meeting on. I believe they're in September. They are supposed to be at their board meeting looking at what they will do and with that. But it is something the legislature is increasingly, from both the House and the Senate, I think people are consistently wanting to see, and we're wanting to see a good, strong performance-based budget from our IHL system. We have community colleges. There's a small group of them that are meeting and looking at the same aspect with that. At the conference yesterday with Accelerate, there was some national data that is being presented. And although that's a workforce conference, you cannot talk about workforce and not talk about higher ed. And so there were some national speakers presenting, talking about the number of states that are moving to performance-based budgeting and how that there has been a great shift in this across the country. Traditionally, across the country, it was really people were focused on institutions. And across the country now, and in this state, we want to see us focused on the student and the student outcomes. And so I think you're going to see this conversation greatly progress. The Senate will be holding hearings the first week of November, where we'll be talking about performance-based budgeting and really looking at the structure of our entire higher ed system in the state of Mississippi, and looking at some of the things that we really we've been looking at. We're looking at building usage, space. We've been looking at how many students are online now exclusively versus going to our universities. And higher ed has greatly changed over the last number of years. And we're still kind of running our system like we were 25 and 30 years ago. And that's simply not going to help us progress into the next decade and beyond in higher ed. We've got to create greater efficiencies and move with what's really going on in higher ed.
Nicole, I appreciate your time as always. Put it on your calendar, second week of November. I want to talk after those Senate hearings. We'll talk soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, bye-bye.
Mornings with Richard Cross. Mornings with Richard Cross is presented by Community Bank. When it comes to money, trust isn't automatic. It's earned. That's why Community Bank does things the old-fashioned way. When you come to us, we take the time to listen to you and discuss any questions you have. Whether you're saving, spending, or planning ahead, you'll find bankers who know the community because they're part of it. Community Bank, banking designed with you in mind. Visit in person or online at communitybank.net. Outdoorsmen in the state of Mississippi, across the southeast, and really across the country have three letters that they know are a problem. Those three letters are CWD. They represent the words chronic wasting disease. It is a disease that has no cure, and it affects the deer population, white-tailed deer, mule deer, elk, reindeer, and it is a problem. Now, the debate comes in when you talk about how big a problem it is and how you manage that problem. For more on this, James Cummins joins us right now. He is Executive Director at Wildlife Mississippi. James, I appreciate some of your time this morning. Good morning to you.
Good morning. Glad to be on the show. Thank you, Richard.
So let's go high level first. I think there are a lot of people that know CWD exists. Maybe they don't know how prevalent it is in some places, even in some of our neighboring states, and maybe don't know exactly what chronic wasting disease is.
Yeah, that's a good question, and I think that you're exactly right. A lot of people, they may know the three letters you mentioned, but they don't know much more than that, and they know it's here in Mississippi. Chronic wasting disease is really a misfolded protein, and I guess, Richard, if I was to try to compare it with something, I would think about mad cow disease, which would be, it's not the same, but it's pretty similar. And so we certainly know that when we're looking at trying to eat beef, or we've had certainly flare-ups in that in the past years. Chronic wasting disease was first found in mule deer in Colorado in 1967, and it's since spread to most of the states, not all the states in the United States, but certainly many, and with a great prevalence being in the eastern Rocky Mountain front. And that not only is in the U.S., but Alberta and Saskatchewan and Canada as well. It was found in Arkansas, right next door to us in 2016, and in Issaquah County, just north of Vicksburg, in 2018 in Mississippi. That was one case. Now there have been over 140 positives. So we've gone in that short period of time. It's really expanded, and it's currently in 23 counties in Mississippi, the most prevalent in the state. And I think one of the things that, as you indicated about people not knowing much about it, is it's in Benton and Marshall County. Probably most people in this state couldn't tell you where Benton and Marshall County are located. Certainly, the senator that was on the show just a little while ago, Ken, and she was a great supporter of the Mississippi Outdoor Stewardship Trust Fund, and I appreciate her leadership there. But so it's certainly spread up there, and
we're talking Holly Springs, Ashland, Potts Camp. That's the area in north central Mississippi that we're talking about.
That's exactly right. That is ground zero in Mississippi for chronic wasting disease. And while people, may not know that much about it, one of the things that I think is extremely important is we're seeing a 90% reduction, for example, in Benton County. We've gone from 20, in Arkansas, for example, they've gone from 25 deer, per square mile, down to 2.5 deer per square mile. That's a 90% reduction. And while we don't have those statistics in Benton County, hunter sightings and researchers are seeing a very similar reduction in the herd in that part of the state. And that's not something that we want. I mean, deer hunting. You're a hunter. I'm a hunter. We get ready excited about opening day of dove season, getting ready for another hunting season. That's what drives Mississippi. It's our heritage. Of all the states, when Aldo Leopold came to Mississippi in 1932, and he'd surveyed a number of states, what he found was Mississippi exceeded any other state in terms of its interest in hunting. And that's still true today.
Yeah. James, I love being outdoors. My son, my 13-year-old son, loves to hunt. And I picked him up from football practice a couple of days ago, and we were running some errands, and he saw a bunch of turkeys out in the field. And he's like, man, did you see all those turkeys? And then he immediately goes, deer season's almost here, Dad. And I was like, it is. It's close, but we kind of look around and we recognize that people are getting food plots ready. They are thinking about as we lose the leaves and acorns start to fall, supplemental feeding. And supplemental feeding is, at least in part, at the center of this conversation about what makes sense, what doesn't make sense. I think there are lots of people that love to put feeders out. Is that still an okay way to go? Is a feeder the way to go versus maybe a salt block or a mineral block that some people traditionally have used?
When I first started bow hunting, and I bow hunted before I gun hunted in the late 1970s. I'd find a persimmon tree and I'd get close to that. I didn't have a food plot. I didn't have a shooting house. I had a Baker climbing stand that if I didn't attach very well, I'd slide down the tree and didn't make me feel very good. Then we went into food plots, and now we've certainly, many Mississippians have started putting out protein and corn as feed. I personally don't feed. I don't bait. I try to manage habitat, improve our forest, improve our grasses, improve the smilax or greenbrier, improve our existing foods, and try to produce larger deer that way. The more you concentrate deer, that includes in a food plot, and that's even more so with a feeder. The more you concentrate something, the greater chance. It's like being out on Ross Barnett Reservoir during COVID. It's a good chance if you're in a boat and somebody's 100 yards away, you're not going to catch anything. But if you put everybody all together, your chance of spreading that, or put everybody in an airplane, the chance of spreading that goes up significantly. And researchers have recently found in a peer-reviewed article, so it's very good science, the Mississippi Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks, Mississippi State University, and the National Wildlife Research Lab have determined that feeding certainly increases the spread or the chances of spread of chronic wasting disease. So if yes, people are feeding, but in areas where CWD already exists, look, it's as you mentioned when we started the show, it's always fatal. We can't get rid of it. It's here, but what we can do is slow the spread of it. And if I was looking at how to slow the spread of it, to be honest with you, where it's already existing in like Benton and Marshall, not a whole lot you can do there. But we're on the fringe of counties, for example, where it doesn't exist yet, but it may be adjacent to a county that it does exist. I think that's where we need to spend a lot of time and effort is that's where we have our greatest chance of slowing it. So if we're not feeding in those counties that are adjacent to an infected county, and it spreads at about 3.5 miles per year. So if we can reduce, contact with, if that deer is at a feeder and then another deer goes up, there's a very high likelihood that deer is going to obtain chronic wasting disease if the deer before it had CWD. So I think we can stop feeding in many areas, and that will reduce the spread.
So when you talk about Benton County and Marshall County as being ground zero for CWD in Mississippi, does that mean that those populations in those two counties are going to continue to fall, period? There's no way around it? Or when you talk about slowing the spread, can you even slow the spread within a county? And I guess deer don't have maps, and they don't know where county lines are, and they don't know where property lines are. They're not just going to stay in their one little place. You can't quarantine deer necessarily. But is there any way to slow the spread within a county where it already exists?
Yes, if you did not feed in that county, and in the chronic wasting disease management plan that the state currently has, there are no feed zones. But it's not, you just can't have a rule that prohibits feeding. You have to enforce that rule. And we certainly know that, for example, in some of these counties where feeding is not allowed, we have a 40% prevalence of feeding. So even though it's not allowed, we don't have the enforcement. We just don't have enough conservation officers in the state. The state's doing a great job of enforcing it. We've got the best commission. The governor's put together the best wildlife commission we've ever had, but we still have to enforce those laws. But back to your question of slowing it. Yes, we can slow it in a county when it is not spread to the entire county. And you're exactly right. They don't pay attention to lines or political calendars or anything like that.
We get a question.
But I think our greatest chance, our greatest effort is really going to be where the disease does not exist.
Yeah. We get a question that says, tell us about how to recognize CWD in a live animal. Whether you're in a deer stand and you see a deer through binoculars, or you're driving along and you see one on the side of the road, is there a way to know? We got about 30 seconds till the break, then we'll continue the conversation.
Sure. So an infected deer with CWD is early on, they're just going to have abnormal behavior. They're going to walk funny. They're not going to look right, But as that disease progresses in that animal's body, they're going to have a lot of thirst. You're going to see them more go to water. You're going to see them look very emancipated. In other words, you're going to see ribs showing. You're going to see something that looks like it has a disease and it's not doing well.
James Cummins is my guest, Executive Director with Wildlife Mississippi. So what are we looking at going forward? The MDWFP is in the process of adopting a new policy as it pertains to CWD. We'll talk about that coming up next. Mornings with Richard Cross, SuperTalk Mississippi. Glad to be with you. We're back right after this.
Mornings with Richard Cross.
People want to hear the truth, man. That's what we're going to do.
Super Talk Mississippi.
Lazy yellow moon coming up tonight, shining through the trees.
Good to be with you. Mornings with Richard Cross, Super Talk Mississippi. Jay at the Res on the C Spire text line says, no, Jim, Richard is not actually a hunter. I would classify myself, you've heard of CEOs at church before? Christmas, Easter, and other special occasions. That's kind of how I am with hunting, but my passion is for being outdoors, period. And especially being with my son as his love for it continues to grow. And so maybe I'm developing into more of a hunter. Maybe I heard the sermon that hooked me and is going to bring me back on non-special occasion Sundays. That's kind of where I am. But I do have a great passion for the outdoors in our state and the health of our animal population, James. And you say in an article that you wrote, it's available at supertalk.fm. You can read that. James Cummins, Executive Director with Wildlife Mississippi, that we're at a bit of a crossroads with regard to the Mississippi Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks, the MDWFP. Every 5 years, they re-examine and reassess the policies that go along with CWD. They're in the process of doing that right now. Is that correct?
That is absolutely correct. And, about 2 months ago, they called a number of us in the conservation and hunting world together at Holmes County State Park and really went over what they were thinking in terms of revising their CWD management plan. And one of the things that they had talked about was opening up feeding statewide. And quite frankly, even some of those in the room and others had just written a peer-reviewed paper that we talked about before the break, talking about that feeding is the greatest way to try to move the deer, to move it through the herd. And so that I had a very difficult time reconciling why that would happen. And I mentioned about we've got such a great interest in hunting in the state. Well, when you have such a great interest, you also have a lot of people that also feel like they know more so what to do than a lot of our professional wildlife biologists. And you kind of probably hard to believe, but there's politics in the state when it comes to hunting. I know that shocks a lot of people, but it does happen. And so, certainly as they presented that plan, and they pointed out that, hey, yeah, they're getting a lot of political pressure to do away with zones and to allow feeding and do things that, in my opinion, and many professionals' opinion, are not in the best interest of our state's deer herd. And we've got a great staff. We've got a new chief of wildlife, Amy Blaylock. She does a phenomenal job. She comes from a long family of wildlife biologists. William McKinley is our deer coordinator. Lynn Posey's doing a phenomenal job as executive director. We've got a great staff. We've got a great commission, but they need to be able to do their job in revising a plan that makes the most sense for us to enjoy hunting. Or if we're just out looking at deer like yourself, observing deer, we want to continue seeing that as well. So as they're revising this plan, we need to take what's in the best interest and take the politics out of this.
Do you believe that there is political pressure on the commission to write regulations that will allow feeding statewide?
I think there's political pressure every time they meet. There's political pressure the other 30 days of the month too. I think there's always going to be political pressure. That happens in 49 other states too. That's nothing new. But what I'm saying is let's follow the science. Let's let the professionals determine what is in the best interest of our herd. Let's look at banning feeding and in a way that makes the most sense so that we can prolong this disease as long as possible. Let's look at trying to make sure we step up enforcement. That would be one other thing that I would really do. We don't a 40% prevalence in counties where it's banned, just because we have a regulation on paper, it is not being enforced to the level that it could be, that's not doing any good either. And then the third thing is, if we have high fence operations or pen deer, and they're transporting deer, that's another thing. People are transporting deer in the state, and that's illegal as well. So we need to step up enforcement there. Moving deer around is going to be one of the main ways that you can spread CWD. And we didn't even get in today talking about the New World screwworm and what that's doing in South Texas. That's for another show. But I'm pretty concerned about that. And that really decimated Texas's deer herd 75 years ago. Bounced back after 10 to 15 years. But that's coming as well. So we've got a lot of pressures, and we need to be able to use good science and not bend to the politics when it comes to setting regulations.
So at least as it exists today, there is no cure for CWD. There is no, at least known, eradication method that I'm aware of, unless you have the ability to somehow kill every single deer that has CWD, wipe those off the map, and then allow the population to grow back. But that's not realistic. Are there scientists, are there wildlife biologists who are actively working to find a cure for this or find some solution that would allow for the eradication of CWD so that you can recreate a healthy herd naturally, or is that just a fantasy?
I think it's more the latter. To your point about research, yes, there is a fair amount of research out there. I'm the past president of the Boone and Crockett Club, and that's been one of our major areas that we have been working toward funding for the last 4 or 5 years is chronic wasting disease research. It's in the soil. It binds to clay. It binds to plant materials. If I cut hay in one field and that has CWD, infected deer in it, and I sell that hay to somebody in Hinds County, CWD will move there too. Right now, we have it in 23 counties. in 10 years is projected. If we don't move deer around and it proceeds at the rate it's proceeding, in 10 years, we'll probably have 55 infected counties, and in 20, probably 73 infected counties. And I think by the year 2040, and that's what the professionals are looking at, we're going to see major declines in our whitetail population in Mississippi.
So, thinking about where you were talking about kind of the hot spots, the initial case in Issaquena County, that means that Warren County and Claiborne County, if it's not there, it's on the way. You're talking about Marshall and Benton. That means that Lafayette County, Union County, Lee County, it's coming, right? It's just a matter of time? Or in some cases, maybe already is there.
County. It's already in Lafayette. It's already in Alcorn. So you're certainly seeing, these areas. And it moves at a roughly 3.5 miles per year. So it doesn't move fast, but deer don't live in a single tree either. They have home ranges and they move as well.
Yeah. I don't mean to be hung up on the politics of this. You mentioned that, and I'm certainly not asking you to call anybody individually out, but when you say political pressure, are you talking about from the legislature? Are you talking about from statewide officials, appointed officials? Is it pressure that's coming from large landowners or clubs and management groups? Where is this political pressure emanating that's pushing back on policies that would help slow the spread of CWD?
Probably the greatest area difference would be you've got a number of growing and fairly politically powerful people in the state that have high fence operations. So we're seeing a lot of political pressure come from those. In other words, they want to be able to feed. They want to be able to move deer in. And they're doing it under the name of private property rights. Well, I look at if the deer in Mississippi and wildlife belong to all of us. They belong to you just as much as they belong to me and people that don't hunt and people that will never hunt or even care about wildlife. They're owned by all of us and held in trust. So fencing something in, and kind of calling it your own or moving it, that's where a lot of that pressure is coming from. Is more of your high fence operations, more of people that want to really bait, feed, things like that, and really. They're not seeing what this disease is doing. We're seeing a lot of the problems, and a lot of this is coming out of Texas. Is where we're seeing people looking at what's going on in Texas, and they want to make Mississippi the next Texas. And I think that's absolutely the wrong way we need to be moving.
But the people in those high fence operations have a population that is somewhat more protected than the deer that roam freely, right?
It's protected with a fence, but diseases move back and forth across a fence. Also, you're seeing in many high fence areas, you're seeing a higher population of deer. Hence they're adding artificial food to it through feeders and protein pellets, which we've already talked about on the show today, has a greater level of transmission than if you're in a food plot or if you're just managing habitat in the woods or the fields.
We got a question on here about the north part of the Delta. Obviously, that borders Arkansas for most of it, where Arkansas has had such a problem. There's a big ditch that separates Mississippi and Arkansas, but deer can swim, I think, as well. What does the North Delta look like?
So we are seeing prevalence in the North Delta. In Arkansas, to be fair, it's more in northwest Arkansas is where most of the CWD exists. Look, I was born and raised in Greenville and loved to fish on Ferguson and Washington and Whiskey Chute in Arkansas. And I've seen deer swim in the river. So it may be a big ditch, but it's not a barrier.
That's right.
So yes, we're certainly seeing the prevalence is moving into the North Delta. And look, if I look at a lot of these hunting clubs, they're not cheap. There's a lot of value in these hunting clubs, and not only just in the Delta, but throughout the state. This can hurt landowners. This can hurt hunting lease rates.
Sure.
This is something that the economic piece is just as important as the environmental piece.
It's very real. James, I appreciate your time. Check out the article online at supertalk.fm. It's a really fascinating read. We'll talk again soon. Thanks so much.
Thanks for being on.
Mornings with Richard Cross, SuperTalk Mississippi.
Rise and shine with information and insight.
Check it out.
Mornings with Richard Cross, Super Talk, Mississippi.
Interesting conversation with James Cummins. Appreciate his time this morning. Some of you were asking about locations of CWD in Mississippi. James talked about some of the hot spots, but when you look at counties in which you have CWD management zones currently, they are concentrated in North Mississippi. So for, what was it, the 25-26 year, and he mentioned that they were working on some of those zones right now. Across the northern border of the state of Mississippi, DeSoto, Marshall, Benton, Tippah, Alcorn, Tishomingo counties all are in the North Mississippi management zone, as are Tate, Panola, Lafayette, Union, and Prentiss counties. And then parts of Quitman, Coahoma, and Tunica County, kind of the southeastern part of Tunica County, the northwestern part of Quitman County, and the northeastern part of Coahoma County. And then south of those northern counties, you have kind of open area. And then the southern part of the Delta, Claiborne, Warren, and Issaquena counties, you have the Issaquena management zone. And then the Harrison management zone is part of Harrison County and part of Hancock County. So a limited number of counties in the state that are currently heavily affected are in that management zone. And what that means, if you're in the management zone, is you've got regulations on the transportation of carcasses, and then you've got feeding restrictions. And the feeding restrictions are pretty simple. Supplemental feeding is banned. No salt licks, no mineral licks, no feeders. There is not currently a ban on food plots. And I guess to use James' example, while yes, if you have a food plot in a particular field, you may have deer that are congregating in that area, but at least they're a little more spread out. His example was if you were on the reservoir during COVID, if you were on a boat and there was another boat 100 feet away, you probably weren't going to pass COVID back and forth. But if you had 20 people on one boat, then the risk was higher for that. I guess the rationale from MDWFP is, hey, with a food plot, at least it's a little more spread out. It's not a salt lick where every deer is coming to one spot. They are nose to nose. They're swapping saliva because they're licking that salt lick or that mineral block. Outdoors and deer hunting in particular is such a part of the legacy in Mississippi, but also an economic driver. Hunting, fishing, outdoors in Mississippi accounts for about $2 billion annually in money spent related to outdoor activities. So it's a big deal. Will, did you know that today is National Radio Day?
I did.
Mr. Marconi would be pleased.
Yes.
Yeah. So, on behalf of all of us at SuperTalk Mississippi, we thank you for continuing to make radio relevant. I've talked in the past about the connection that exists through radio, and so much of that, with my upbringing, was sports related. You know, the ability to have a game that's being broadcast hundreds, if not thousands of miles away from where you sit or I sit, and yet there's this connection with that place because it comes right into my home or my car or my back porch, and I can feel like I'm there. And it matters locally. And that, to me, is the coolest thing about SuperTalk Mississippi. If you don't know kind of the story of the founding of SuperTalk Mississippi, that's fine. There's so many places where you got big cities, right? I mean, you go to Atlanta and you've got WSB. That's what, AM 600, I think. Memphis used to have a bunch of big AM radio stations. That number has gone down through the years. Cincinnati, a bunch of them west of the Mississippi. WWL out of New Orleans. And those are huge radio stations in big cities, big markets. Well, we don't have that in Mississippi. We may have big radio stations, but we don't have big markets. And so the idea with the creation of SuperTalk Mississippi was, what if we tie the entire state together through a network of stations where we become one big market? And so Mississippi's 3 million people become a single market. So it's not, the Miami market, the Tampa market, the Jacksonville market, the Palm Beach market. It's Mississippi is the market. And it's a really unique thing. There is, at least to my knowledge, not another state in the United States that has a radio network that is exactly like ours here at SuperTalk Mississippi. But the thing is, it works because of you, because of your interaction, because of our guests' willingness to come on and share with us things that are happening, because of your passion for all things Mississippi. And it's really cool that we get to share that, and that privilege is not lost on me to get to visit with you 5 mornings a week. Really, really cool thing. How'd you fall in love with radio, Will?
It was through listening to the stations out of Tuscaloosa. I could pick those up.
Wait, are you a Bammer?
No.
I know.
But I think it was WZZ. I can't remember the station, but they would play. Houston knows the people that I'm talking. I could name call letters, and he'll go, "Oh yeah. Such and such work there." But I would listen to them, and they would do, pop music during the day and night, and then late at night on Friday and Saturday nights, they were at the club. All right, and they were playing club music, and that was, as a kid, that was kind of cool. And then on Sunday nights, they would play alternative music. And I, as a kid who didn't have access to all, I always talk about how I discovered everything like 4 years later in Van Vliet, Mississippi, where time tends to slow down a bit. That's where I discovered music. And then, as you mentioned, sports radio. I had family members who grew up St. Louis Cardinals fans.
Yeah, KMOX.
Because they could pick up Cardinals games. Paul Gallo always talked about how he would listen to Cardinals games on the old AM radio. And, my generation became Atlanta Braves fans because of TBS on TV if you had cable. But a lot of the older folks in Mississippi became Cardinals fans and their kids subsequently, because of the AM radio signal that would reach all the way to Mississippi. And then, from there, it was just every night I would fall asleep listening to the radio.
It's AM 750 out of Atlanta, WSB. It's interesting. Those radio stations are called, the big 50,000 watt AM stations are called clear channel stations. And they have basically no signal during the daytime outside of a very defined area. But at nighttime, the smaller AM radio stations had to power down. They had to throttle it back. And those big blowtorches in the sky, they got to go full power.
Yeah.
750 out of Atlanta. So anyway, the point being, because the daytime distribution is so poor, almost all of those big AM radio stations now have sister FM stations. I'm saying 50,000. It's 100,000 watt AMs. You get the 50, or maybe whatever. The wattage doesn't matter. They're big. I once listened to WWL out of New Orleans in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Driving to an NCAA basketball tournament and listening to an LSU baseball game on WWL, in rural Pennsylvania. It was incredible.
Pretty crazy. Wolfman Jack, the famous DJ, he did a lot of his DJing from Mexico because Mexico didn't have the regulations on wattage, and so they would turn that thing up to birds would fly into it and die. That's how powerful the signal was coming out there.
Wow.
And he became a national celebrity through this AM radio that was so powerful they had to set it up in Mexico, but everybody across the nation knew who he was, and he was at a station in Tijuana or wherever. That's how powerful they are.
If you've ever wondered about call letters for radio stations, there may be a couple of exceptions, but generally speaking, radio stations east of the Mississippi River, their call letters begin with W, and radio stations west of the Mississippi River begin with K. Like I said, there are a few exceptions. KMOX out of St. Louis, west of the Mississippi. WSM out of Nashville, AM 650, east of the Mississippi. KOA out of Denver, 850 AM, huge one. Then you've got WLW out of Cincinnati, another big one. Was that what WKRP was loosely based on, or not the same?
I guess so.
Anyway. All right, Mornings with Richard Cross. We'll wrap it up with you next.
Hey, how's it going, man?
The news you need.
Every 10, 15 minutes, there's something.
The talk you love.
They really talk about the things that matter. I'm into all that stuff.
Mornings with Richard Cross. Super Talk Mississippi.
I got a little change in my pocket going jingle-lang-a-lang. Wants to call you on the telephone, baby. I give you a ring, but each time we talk, I get the same old thing. Always go hooky-dokey-see until I get a wedding ring. My honey, my baby, don't put my love upon no shelf. She said don't give me no lines and keep your hands to yourself.
Good to be with you as we wrap things up on this Thursday morning. Mornings with Richard Cross, presented by Community Bank. Appreciate all of your interaction on the C Spire text line, 601-879-4395. Glad to be with you this morning. The newest pseudo-controversy surrounding President Trump comes from a speech that John Ossoff gave. Ossoff, the senator from Georgia, decided to attack the president and took a path that surprised a lot of people. There is a presidential aide who is 35 years old and blonde, and her name is Natalie Harp. And John Ossoff didn't use her full name, but people around politics, certainly in D.C., knew who he was talking about. At a recent campaign event, the Georgia Democrat argued that President Trump would rather travel with Natalie on Air Force One than do the hard work that comes with being commander-in-chief. He has gotten a lot of pushback for that take. It was a pretty classic campaign speech. Pick something that might be quotable, drop it into the speech, get a laugh line, get an applause, get some whoops and some hollers from the crowd, and move on. But people haven't moved on, especially the president. He is said to have been incensed about this. I don't know that this is a big story. I don't really think that it is a big story. I think it's something that just kind of fades away, and maybe already has. But did anybody complain about Reggie Love? Do you remember Reggie Love? He was the former Duke football and basketball player that was Barack Obama's body man. It's just the name for kind of your top eight. Traveled everywhere with the president. Made sure that travel logistics were what his job wasn't to plan all of the travel, but he knew all of the details. If the president needed a Diet Coke or a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, it was Reggie Love's job to get it. If he needed access to a phone, it was his job to hand him the phone, to make sure that his suitcase, like everything that the president needed, that fell into the purview of Reggie Love. started working with Barack Obama in 2007 and did so through 2011. Having a presidential aide that is by your side every step of the way is not new. But because this president has a 35-year-old attractive blonde as his aide that is there every step of the way, now all of a sudden it's campaign fodder for Jon Ossoff, seemingly out of nowhere. You can say I'm being naive. You can say, oh, Richard, there's an implication there. Well, yeah, but it better be true. Like, the implication that Jon Ossoff is making is that there's something improper that's going on there. If you're going to throw that out, it probably better be right. But that's where we are. And then finally, Trump has announced potentially the most crushing economic operation ever against Iran. Amid negotiations to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, a major oil trading waterway that has been effectively closed since March, he said on Truth Social, this will be economic warfare and isolation on an unprecedented scale. He said any nation that works to provide any type of lifeline to Iran will be hit with tremendous economic consequences from the U.S., so it's not just economic consequences on Iran, but anybody that helps them. Oil smuggling, swap lines, cash transfers, exchange houses, ship registries, front companies, it all needs to stop now. You know who you are. This will be an economic D-Day, and we need all of our allies to stand with the United States to isolate and defeat the Iran threat. The only interesting thing that really is in this is that this announcement from Trump came one day after the UAE announced that they would cut off trade with Iran after Tehran fired 2 missiles at the Emirates. Thanks for being with us on this Thursday morning. Appreciate my guest, Senator Nicole Boyd, and Executive Director of Wildlife Mississippi, James Cummins. Hope you have a great day. For Will East, I'm Richard Cross. This is Mornings with Richard Cross, presented by Community Bank.
A SuperTalk Mississippi Media production.